Britain's decision earlier this year to leave the European Union sent shockwaves through global markets, with many expecting developed and most especially developing economies who rely in many ways on trade and business with the European giant to suffer. One such effect is going to be felt soon, if not already, by the South African market, and it is in the automotive industry, a sector that on the manufacturing end has done relatively well for itself through recent developments. Gumtree Automotive Head is Jeff Osborne, who joins us to discuss just how the Brexit effect is going to be felt in South Africa. Jeff, pleasure to have you with us.
Good day, Tim. Good to be here.
Right. And for me, it's like a sort of convoluted thing to make a connection between the automotive industry and all the European politics, particularly the exit of Britain from the EU. Yeah. Where is the connection, especially when it comes to vehicles?
Well, I think the old saying that when our major trading partners sneeze, we all catch a cold.
Yeah.
But where Brexit is concerned, Tim, and with a bit of hindsight at this stage now, I think it's fair to say that the implications and the effect on our economy and on the auto industry in particular is not going to be that profound. And in any event, it's likely to be over an extended period, because if one considers that nothing happens until Article 15 is implemented between the UK and Europe. And then they've still got another 2 years in which to agree to the terms of that process. So there's a whole lot that's going to happen in between now and then. So I think the short answer is, in terms of the short-term effects, we saw a devaluation of the pound, which is good for us because we import a lot from Britain, particularly in the autos industry. So that made our rand stronger over that period. And there was some effect on stocks and shares within the autos industry, both here and the UK.
You know, I was about to say that Britain, I could not connect, maybe Germany, maybe Japan, and increasingly now China, you know, because obviously the German brands very strong in South Africa, Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, and they also are located here and probably from there, but I wasn't aware that there's something coming from Great Britain, from the UK, coming into South Africa.
No, well, if you consider, Tim, that we export cars to Britain, and Britain is one of our major export destinies. And in terms of the present UK relationship, you can buy a car in Britain, be resident in Germany, take the car through to Germany and not pay any duties.
Yes.
But that may well change.
Yes.
So it could have a longer term effect on the number of cars being sold in Britain where the buyers are of a European origin. So it could affect it. But as I say, I don't think certainly it's not apparent right now, because our exports are still growing and they're still strong. I think what is important for us is that we've got time in our hands. We just need to make sure that whatever trade agreements are going to be negotiated going forward needs to be done favourably and as soon as possible.
Well, and talking about the other countries, China, for instance, there's a new plant that is going to be built here in South Africa, the manufacturing plant for vehicles, that BMW itself has made additional investments, and I think there are a couple of Toyota as well, if I recall. So why is there still such interest, appetite in investing in South Africa's automotive industry?
Look, South Africa is a favoured destination for automotive manufacture, but to give perspective on that, in real terms, we manufacture less than 1% of the global automotive industry. So it's small in global terms, but very significant in terms of our economy. In fact, it contributes a significant percentage towards our GDP. So it is important to us. And we've become known to produce quality vehicles. There's been relative labour stability, but certainly the quality of vehicles that have been produced out of here are good. And we have to be competitive because we are far away from most markets. So it behoves us to make sure that the entire logistic chain is reliable and predictable.
Now, who are we producing these vehicles for? Because our market is small.
Yeah, and not only that, Tim, you're quite right, but also our market is shrinking. We probably will end this year around about 15% down on local sales. But on the export side, we probably will be up as much as 38%.
Okay. So more South African produced vehicles are now for export sale than for local consumption, so to speak.
Absolutely. And that's the way it's been driven. So we export to the United States and Britain, Europe, Australia, right-hand and left-hand drive vehicles.
But being part of SADC, South Africa, with 300 million plus people, is that having any bearing? Does it make any difference in terms of the number of sales of vehicles in the SADC market, or we have not become a market yet?
I think, have always had aspirations to grow our exports into the rest of Africa, but the reality is that what we're seeing now is that they too some of them are becoming destinations for vehicle manufacture, and they are seeking, quite understandably so, to protect their own markets, and they're starting to impose import restrictions and duties. So in real terms, the likelihood of our exports of automotive vehicles into Africa growing at this stage is not as great as it is to the rest of the world.
And you spoke about the market shrinking by up to 15%. I suppose you mean new vehicle sales, right? And I imagine the previously owned vehicles, the market there is growing. What is the dynamic? And that's where you operate as Gumtree anyway.
No, absolutely. A very good point you make.
Yeah.
And it's all to do with affordability, the National Credit Act, and the price of cars. New cars have gone up. Understandably, the rand has weakened over the last 2 years by almost 60%. So there has been quite a dramatic increase, inflation with new car prices. So a lot of prospective buyers find themselves in a position where they can't afford to pay the ticket price of a new car. So the alternative to that obviously is a used car. Just to give you another perspective on one of the other dynamics that affects that in this market, since the advent of the National Credit Act, which is a fine piece of legislation, it's designed to protect people from themselves, if you like. As we speak, the bank decline rate right now on credit applications is about 60%.
Oh.
So it's very, very high.
Yes.
And people then find themselves in a position where they have a particular spec of car in mind, and there's still huge value out there in the used car market. Low mileage cars with some warranty remaining and some motor plan in place. So what has happened is that the ratio of used to new has been steadily growing, and it's probably about 2.8 to 1 now, 2.8 as used as is to new, whereas 5 years ago it was the other way around. Where
people were buying more new vehicles than used vehicles.
Correct.
Now it's the 3 times more used vehicles to one new vehicle.
Absolutely. But the problem is the chain or the supply chain will start, and it is already starting to take strain, because with the decline in new car sales, good used car stock is now becoming difficult to obtain. So the dealers are struggling to get good used stock into their dealerships.
Now, recently there was a car conference held in Joburg, Kyalami Racetrack to be precise, and it was several days. I did not think that there was still so much excitement in motor vehicles in South Africa, but people love their cars, and you were one of the featured speakers there. Tell me about that event.
No, absolutely. And I think where cars are concerned, where motor vehicles are concerned, there's always a high level of emotion, and there are many petrol heads out there, and they generally, car shows are always popular. You know, wherever there's a car show, there's always a healthy attendance. So I don't know what the final numbers were, but it was a very, very good show indeed, world-class standard, held at the new Kyalami track. Most of the vehicle manufacturers were there. Vehicle component suppliers, aftermarket suppliers, even a whole array of classic and old cars. So it was a wonderful day, a few days. In fact, it ran for 5 days. But on the one day in particular, the Thursday last week, there was an industry conference hosted by Car Magazine called the Cars Conference. And that was an interesting conference because, and there were some very good and interesting key speakers there as well, and we were privileged at Gumtree to be part of the panel there. But the theme of the day was the change that is occurring in the motor industry, being driven by the consumer, how the consumer buys a car, how he does his research, and this transition from the old analog existence into digital.
So anyway, what are the trends that you are seeing out there, or at least that were shared with you? I'm thinking with the advent of Uber now, and Google and others working on self-driven cars, and the established manufacturers themselves developing vehicles that can park themselves. Everyone is trying something new here. So what's going on? Which direction is it going?
Very much so, and that was very much part of the theme of the presentations and discussions on the day. are the changes that are already happening, and some of them are there. The technology is there already. It's just a matter of how long it will take to kick in. Obviously, it'll take a bit longer here, but they are already, and the term they use is autonomous cars or self-drive cars. This is a reality. It's there already. And you've got Uber as a classic example of a disruption of the traditional way of mobility, where you'd own a car and drive it around or take a taxi. Now you've got an organization, Uber, which has globally turned the taxi industry on its head, and they don't own any taxis. So the thinking is that with autonomous cars, that'll take about 90% out of the cost of an Uber ride, because there's no driver. Now you get the car at 10% the previous price, and this is going to come, and then you can choose to share a ride on the way if you want to, and half the price again. So the thinking is that 5 years, who knows how long down the track, the consumer will start questioning the sense of owning a vehicle, because what they really want is mobility. They want to get from one point to another.
It'll be a timeshare kind of thing, I can imagine, on the horizon. So you own a Bentley, 5% or something.
Quite possible.
Then you just order it to come and fetch you whenever you want. And then another day you change, you say, you know, today I just want to experience maybe Mercedes-Benz or whatever.
Yes.
And then it drives you for a week and so on.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. And what it tells us is that all the players in this process, the banks, the vehicle manufacturers, the dealers, are going to have to align with the changing landscape.
And Gumtree, you still offer good value there?
We believe so, indeed. And I think, humbly again, we're proud of the fact that we are leaders in terms of a number of criteria in the classified autos space, where we have certainly the largest selection of vehicles available, predominantly dealer stock, but also private cars and some exotic cars. We have the biggest audience, and we have a huge choice, which we've got private and dealer stock, and so it gives the consumer a massive choice.
All right, all you need to do is to go to Gumtree and the automotive section. You'll find a vehicle of your choice there, I suppose.
Absolutely. We have 94 visits a day, 94,000 unique visits a day.
Wow.
Looking for a car in South Africa.
Jeff Osborne, thank you very much. Always a pleasure to catch up with you.
Tim, my pleasure.
Much appreciated. Jeff Osborne is the automotive head of Gumtree, South Africa.